At our last meeting, I kind of got the distinct feeling that I hadn't done a very good job of getting my point across. Either that or my point was so obscure that nobody was getting it. So I wanted to kind of go back over some territory with this meeting and go back over some territory that I covered before, that is, and try and be a little bit clearer about it. And then this will be the last talk on the Heart Sutra. Next week, Venerable Losam will be teaching on bodhicitta, and he'll teach for the month of April, and then I'll be back in May. Inshallah, as the Muslims say. Okay. So the Heart Sutra is sort of like a conversation. It's a little bit weird conversation. So let me go right back to the very beginning. The Buddha and an entourage of his students are on Vulture Peak. And the Buddha sits down and he goes into a meditative state. And then Shariputra, who in the Heart Sutra is described as being the venerable Shariputra, asks a question of Avalokiteshvara, who's described as noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva. So well, I've thought about this, and one way of thinking about this is that this is kind of a conversation between Theravadan student, Shariputra, and Mahayana master, Avalokiteshvara. So Shariputra asks, how should one practice the perfection of wisdom? And Avalokiteshvara answers that question. And by my way of thinking about this, the way he answers the question is, first, he talks about how do things appear in the beginning of meditation, and then he moves into what is the experience of deeper meditation. So let me clarify a little bit what I mean by this. And again, this is my interpretation. I'm extracting what I read in the Dalai Lama's commentary when I say this, but I want to put this in the context of teaching that I've been doing over the last several months. And what I've been doing is trying to bring together over this period of time teachings of the Abhidharma that come out of the Theravada tradition, teachings about emptiness that come out of the Mahayana, Madhyamaka tradition, middle way tradition of the Mahayana, and also teachings that come out of Vajrayana, or the Tantric teachings. And I think that implicit in the Heart Sutra, you find all these things. In the very beginning of the Heart Sutra, when Avalokiteshvara begins to speak and answers the question that has been put to him by Shariputra, he talks about the 5 skandhas, he talks about the sources of perception, and these sorts of things, which is to say, he talks about an understanding of the mind, or a way of understanding the mind, rather, that is explicitly developed in the Abhidharma teachings that you find in the Theravada tradition. They're also in the Mahayana tradition, but the Theravada tradition has initially organized them. He says form is emptiness, emptiness is form, which is to say that all material things are empty of inherent existence. All sensations, or perceptions rather, are empty of inherent existence. All feelings are empty of inherent existence. All habit patterns, skamas, samskaras, there we go, are empty of inherent existence. Most importantly, consciousness itself is empty of inherent existence. And one way of thinking about this is what's going on from the perspective of a meditator. Now, His Holiness brings this out quite specifically. And I'm going to go back to a screen share just very briefly, where he does this, just for reference sake. So here we are on page 120 of the Essence of the Heart Sutra, which is His Holiness's commentary. And he says, one way to understand this passage about how all the skandhas are empty is from the perspective of a meditator realizing emptiness directly. And he goes on to say that for this person meditating, absolutely no experience, no multiplicity exists, because all that they experience is the emptiness of phenomena. So they don't experience phenomena at all. This, by my way of thinking, is speaking to something that in the Vajrayana tradition is called the clear light mind. It's the goal of practice of Mahamudra, and it's the state that we all pass through in the process of dying. I'm going to stop this recording for just a moment. Okay, pardon the interruption. The heater is now under control. In the Vajrayana tradition, there are two stages of meditation practice. And this is, again, not explicit in the Heart Sutra, but the commentary that Thupten Jinpa has made, note 20, as I pointed out earlier, leads us into this way of thinking about things. That the fundamental practice is meditating on oneself as a Buddha, which is to say, one understands that one's ultimate nature, which is the clear light mind, is also the Buddha mind, the Tathagata, one's Buddha nature. And it has a number of aspects. It has a wisdom aspect, it has a compassion aspect, so on and so forth. In its wisdom aspect, it can appear in the form of Manjushri, the Bodhisattva, or the Bodhisattva image of Manjushri. In its compassion form, it can appear as the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. Although these images, these Buddha images, seem to be other than one's own mind, they are in fact simply aspects of one's own mind, one's enlightened mind taking form. Okay, so why do I bring this up? In the practice of Mahamudra, which is achieving this state of understanding, experiencing the absolute emptiness of all phenomena, and therefore not experiencing multiplicity, a state in which there's no subject and no object, a state of perfect peace, essentially an enlightened state. There are different ways to get there, the different types of practices. And one practice is to meditate on, or to develop calm abiding on, an image, a mental image an aspect of one's own mind, which is to say, like the image of Manjushri. And when one develops that fixed, calm abiding on that aspect of oneself, then one meditates on the emptiness, the empty nature of that image. Since that image is essentially one's own mind, through that process, one is sort of, I wouldn't say tricking oneself, but one is cleverly using a support to meditate on the empty nature of their own mind. I think this is one of the places where we got kind of messed up last week, trying to understand this and why this is important. When His Holiness in the commentary is saying, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, consciousness is emptiness, emptiness is consciousness. And then goes on in his commentary to say that a person meditating on the emptiness of form, meditating on the emptiness of feelings, meditating on the emptiness of consciousness, is essentially meditating on emptiness alone, and therefore is in a state of no multiplicity, experiencing no subject and no object. He's opening the door to saying that the practice of the perfection of wisdom is the practice of Mahamudra. It's the practice of seeing things as they are in their ultimate nature. But the way of getting there is by meditating on the emptiness of their conventional appearance. Is this making sense to people? I'd like you to chime in and say yes or no, because if it's not making sense, I need to stop here and we need to kind of sort this out. So Anil, is this making sense? Anil?
Sorry, you have to come up. I have to walk up to the computer.
That's okay. I mean, is what I'm saying making sense to you?
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Okay. Jai, is this making sense to you? Uh-oh, Jai, you're muted, so I can't hear you. Okay, I guess we're not going to find out. Often when Buddhists chant the Heart Sutra, they seem to feel, or they come to the conclusion, that the Heart Sutra is about the nature of phenomena, that phenomena are empty. And their understanding stops at that point. It doesn't get beyond that point. There's nothing wrong with that. But as Avalokiteshvara is saying, that's not the practice of perfect wisdom. That's a practice which is foundational, which is a beginning practice to getting to the place where one begins to practice perfect wisdom. First, one has to see that phenomena are empty, which means to say, you have to perceive phenomena. And then you have to have an intellectual understanding that they're empty. And then you have to begin to see them directly as being empty, which is the next step. But the step after that is to see only the emptiness of all phenomena and not see the phenomena. This is a kind of a difficult transition to make. It's hard to understand what this means. Our mind can sort of grasp it, but in another sense, our mind can't grasp it because we don't have really the experience of what it is. Okay. And the point that I'm also trying to make is the intermediate state between seeing phenomena as empty, which is sort of a philosophical analytical position, and the actual experience of no subject, no object, which is the experience of the clear light mind, which is the experience of the mere emptiness of all phenomena, in which there are no phenomena that are appearing to be empty, has an in-between state or an in-between position in the practice of developing one's ability to understand the perfection of wisdom. And that in-between state in Vajrayana is called Deity Yoga. It's where you meditate on an aspect of your mind in the form of a contrived image of a deity. And then that contrived image actually becomes, in your experience, a living aspect of your own mind. And then the tricky thing that's happening is your mind as a subject, or your consciousness as a subject, is meditating on an object, which is a bodhisattva image like Manjushri, which is also merely your own mind. So mind is meditating on mind. And finally, the two merge, like water being poured into water, and then everything disappears. That's the end of the path. That's the goal of the whole practice. And so that's the point I'm trying to make, is that the Heart Sutra encompasses this arc from understanding the Abhidharma to understanding the emptiness of the phenomena that the Abhidharma talks about, which is aspects of oneself, to understanding the empty nature of one's own mind, to understanding, or I should better say, merely experiencing sheer emptiness. And that experience of sheer emptiness, without multiplicity, is the perfection of wisdom. That's perfect wisdom. That's wisdom as understood in the Buddhist tradition, right? So after Avalokiteshvara explains this to Shariputra, he gives Shariputra a mantra, which further indicates that embedded in this tradition, perhaps sub rosa, is Vajrayana practice. And then the Buddha arises from his meditative state, in which presumably he's in a condition of perfect wisdom. And he says, well done. That's exactly correct, Avalokiteshvara. So that's very interesting, because if he's in the state of no subject, no object, how does he know what Avalokiteshvara was saying? So there is a condition which is, I don't even know how to describe it, because it's the true Buddha nature. It's this condition of Shakyamuni's mental continuum, of Shakyamuni's mind. It's a state where there's like a double exposure. For those of us who are old enough to remember film cameras, sometimes you can take two images and have them exposed on the same negative. The Buddha experiences something like a double exposure of all things being empty, total emptiness, no subject, no object, no multiplicity. And in the same cognitive instant, he perceives the multiplicity that ordinary people like we perceive. Now that seems to contradict this notion that in the clear light mind, there is no subject and no object. So that's the difference between the clear light mind that we might achieve and the clear light mind of a perfected Buddha. And that's the only way I can explain it. Maybe that's not a good explanation. Maybe I'm not even correct, because I'm not a Buddha. So I'm really just trying to understand what's going on here. Yes, Anil.
Well, I was just thinking about that as you were talking. And it seems to me that the Buddha would literally have a foot in both fields, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
our field and the Buddha field, purely because he is alive. He is manifest as a human being at that point. So he would be in both places.
That's a great interpretation, a great explanation.
Because then when the Buddha dies, he is no longer the Buddha, he is the Buddha field. And then he perceives us from a different perspective. But since he is alive, he's able to relate to us and to his experience of the Buddha field.
You should be teaching this. You should be doing this talk, Anil.
I'm just adding in the snippets here and there. Actually, you led to it, so you wanted feedback. So,
well, thank you. I mean, that's a great insight. I think that really solves the problem. So thank you for that. Yeah, it's very hard for me to do a talk like this when I can't see who is here, who's attending, and I can't relate to the people who are attending. But be that as it may, I don't actually have anything else to say. There isn't anything else to say. What is there to say? So, having said that I don't have anything else to say, I think I'm not going to say anything else. And we'll end it for the evening, unless somebody has questions or observations.
well,
that they can have something to say.
Would you revisit the meditative experience that you went over, your explanation of meditation on emptiness that you did last week, just briefly, since we missed it and we didn't quite manage to get hold of the recording?
Well, I did this evening.
Also, what we've done this evening is similar to what
is hopefully a clearer version of what I spoke about last week.
Oh, okay.
So that lets me off the hook. I don't have to do it again because I just did it.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough.
So how does that?
Okay. Here comes
So
Janice. You're
Dennis
in
has
trouble
a
now.
question.
You're in trouble.
So how is that? Oh, can I explain this?
Yeah.
When we do the tantric practice of whether guru or green Tara, when we become, is that similar to this one with the?
It is. That's what he was talking about.
Right.
Is there
So
a
I
difference
think
between those two? The tantric one?
no, it doesn't. No. If I understand what your question is, Janice, and if I answer in a way that doesn't answer your question, it means I didn't get your question. So ask it again. If you meditate yourself as green Tara, okay, that's where we're starting from, correct?
Mhm.
Okay. If you meditate yourself as green Tara is an aspect of your own Buddha nature. Okay. In the same way that Manjushri is an aspect of your Buddha nature. Green Tara is said to be the enlightened activity or the energetic mind of the Buddha, taking that form. So if you meditate yourself as green Tara, then what you're doing is you're meditating on the enlightened aspect of your own mind, a certain enlightened aspect of your own mind. Green Tara isn't other than you. In the meditation practice, it starts out seeming that she's other than you, and then you and she merge. And that's like a little trickery, because we, in our ordinary minds, think of ourselves as being different than being enlightened. We think of ourselves as being different than our own enlightened potential, our own enlightened mind, which is why we're in the mess that we're in. But in the meditative practice, what you're doing is starting from that position that your enlightened mind, Tara, is different than yourself. And then you begin to practice the recognition that your enlightened mind is not different than yourself. Okay, is that making sense?
Yes.
Okay. So having gotten to the place where you practice that your enlightened mind is not different than yourself, then you look at what is that enlightened mind in the form of Tara. When you're looking at what that enlightened mind is in the form of Tara, you can look at it from the point of view of the qualities of Tara, which is her energetic, compassionate, pure nature, and that's her sort of like her conventional nature, the way she's manifesting in the world, kind of in the way in which Anil was talking about the Buddha has a physical body. This is sort of like the way she manifests as a mental image. Or you can look at her ultimate nature, which is the emptiness of Tara. Because all phenomena are empty. All phenomena are devoid of inherent existence, including our own minds, and including our minds in any form they take, even if they take the form of Tara, even if they take the form of Manjushri, even if they take the form of Shakyamuni Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha himself was utterly empty of inherent existence in every aspect of himself. And he was fully aware of it, which is what made him a Buddha. Okay, did this make sense or did I lose you along the way?
No, it makes sense. That's what's
Okay.
good.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that as sort of a sidebar, I think that a lot of folks who get into Buddhist meditation practice don't get a sense of the larger context of what they're doing, right? So the question arises, why am I meditating on Tara? Oh, well, Tara is this bodhisattva, and so it's good to meditate on her. Or she represents these qualities, and you want to, have an interaction with these qualities. But I think sometimes just people don't get that all these images are images that are really themselves, aspects of themselves. They're perfected selves. They're higher selves, if you will. They're Buddha selves, right? So that's hard enough in itself. And then when you begin to and so now I'm going to repeat myself. So then when you begin to understand that and to work with that and get comfortable with that, then the next step is to understand the empty nature of that aspect of yourself. Because otherwise you're kind of stuck at the level of energy or at the level of compassion or the level of this is what I think wisdom is or something like that. And you have to get beyond that because the perfection of wisdom is getting beyond that. It's getting to the ultimate nature of what things are. And until you do that, you're not free.
Well, I think the other part to that, David, is that if you don't understand the inherent emptiness of whoever you're meditating on, then in effect, you're merely transferring yourself and sort of creating the deity. You see what
And
I'm
you're concretizing it.
Right. That's
Yeah,
it.
and if you're concretizing it, then you're deluding yourself.
And you're missing the point, and you're adding to your own confusion.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. You are adding to your own confusion.
Okay, I think on that point we can all go to sleep.
All right. On that point, we can all go to sleep. So that sounds good to me. So thank you for showing up.
Well, thank you.
Lisa-
We really enjoy your class.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Janice.
And I'm glad
So-
we remember we live in this void now and it's like 7:00. Oh my God, it's Saturday.
Well, we're old enough and anyway, there's a plague about. So we're not going to go out on Saturday night like it's date night and do whatever. I mean, maybe if we were younger, we would in spite of what's going on, but we're not. So this is what we do on Saturday night.
If we remember. That's the trick.
All righty.
Well,
I
thank
just
you.
want to thank you.
Thank you.
that was because I was talking with a friend yesterday about how much I and she struggle with the emptiness concept. And I will highlight to her that she should watch this tape because I found it really helpful. Thank
Oh,
you.
good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It makes me feel like all my hot air is useful hot air.
And it's not
It's
just
got
the fun.
substance.
All right. Again, good night, everybody.
Night,
Good
night.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Care.
David.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.